Hello and thanks for joining us for this edition of The Best Of, our selection of exclusive reports sent in by our correspondents over the last 7 days. Today we're in Spain, where an offshore gas field is being blamed for 300 earthquakes in just 2 weeks. And then it's the United States, where pigeons are helping to keep former gang members out of trouble. But our first story is here in France, where Interior Minister Manuel Valls last month reignited a row over the expulsion of Roma. It was the government of Nicolas Sarkozy who first paid Roma to go back to Romania. And now socialist Mr Valls has picked up the hot potato of French politics. According to him, some Roma will never integrate into French society and should be sent away. But as this report shows, certain elements of the community are trying hard to become part of French life. Audrey Racine and Yoann Baudin have the story.
It's 7 a.m. at this Roma camp in northern France. Time for the children to get up for school.
Lydia, time to get up. Let's go. Massimo, are you going to get ready for school?
For these children, getting up for school is harder than for most. It's less than 10 degrees outside. Massimo's in his first year of primary school. He's driven there in the same van that he sleeps in. He'll be there when the bell rings in a few minutes, but his sisters won't make it in today.
It's very difficult because I don't have running water or a shower to wash the kids. I don't have a washing machine to wash our clothes. And Kutsa and Lydia aren't going to school today because they haven't got anything to wear that's clean.
Getting an education for Massimo is not simple. To earn a place at the proper school, as it's known to the Roma, first, he has to learn French. Lessons for many Roma children take place in mobile schools. They're taught by teachers like Pierre Boisselot, who travels to campsites across the region to give lessons.
We don't have much idea of their previous schooling in Romania. One or two of my current pupils are just starting to learn to read, aged 11 and 12, so we can assume that their education has not been normal. It's true that they don't go to school very often in Romania. When they get to 11 or 12 here, they suddenly have to start going to school for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. No child could suddenly do that. You have to build it up gradually.
In these vans, children spend a few hours each week learning basic reading skills, mathematics, and some history and geography.
Now let's try to find Romania. Where is Romania on here?
Roumanie aici.
Classes in the vans only last a few months, preparing pupils for support classes provided within traditional schools. Only about a third of children living in camps in France are educated, despite the high demand from their families. Many of those who do go to school often find their education interrupted by repeated exclusions from class. Pierre often looks in on former pupils to see how they're getting on. These ones were evicted from their camp in Lille in September.
Hi, Mrs. Stoika. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
That's your new place.
Yeah, just here. But there are no school places for Bianca or Florina.
When families move on, they often have to do it on their own because they need to stay near their children's schools. Then we can help continue the kids' education, but in most cases, they move too far away. Those kids there were in a high school in Lille, but now to get to school, they'd have to spend what? An hour in a bus or on a train? An hour on public transport for Bianca and Florina, and for the younger children as well. It's too far for them at their age. We wouldn't force that on our children.
On n'imposerait pas ça à nos élèves, à nos enfants, à nous, on n'imposerait pas ça.
Of the 20 students that got into school last year, thanks to Pierre, only 5 have started back for the new term. Massimo is managing to keep his attendance up.
He has a certificate that says he goes to school, and that goes in our file. The file that could help us get a house. That certificate means the authorities know my son is in school.
He's only 7 years old, but Massimo knows that his family's future in France rests on his shoulders, as well as his father's hopes for a better life.
Hundreds of earthquakes in the space of a few days. That's the new and unwelcome novelty facing residents on the east coast of Spain. They blame the seismic shakes on an old offshore gas well that's recently started being reused. It holds enough energy for 5 million people, but locals are afraid of what else it may have in store. This report from Adeline Percept, Clément Perrouot and Phil Minshall.
There has rarely been protests in this small town on the Spanish coast, but in Benicarlo, people are now on edge, traumatised by the repeated tremors of recent weeks. In their opinion, the earthquakes seem to be caused by the activity of the Castor offshore platform, which is storing natural gas around 2,000 metres below the surface of the sea.
For our safety and for a sustainable world, we say Castor out, speculators out.
In the last month, around 400 tremors have been recorded in this area, which has previously been considered stable, and the seismic shocks began at exactly the same time as the gas storage. What people felt repeatedly was recorded on camera, an earthquake with an intensity of 4.2 on the Richter scale. Following this, the Spanish government ordered the temporary shutdown of the platform. The authorities consider that there's a probable link between the gas storage injections here and the earthquakes. This is what the geologists have to say.
Whether the Castor project will continue or not depends on further studies. We must be sure that there is going to be no further earthquakes like the ones we had, otherwise we will think about alternative storage. But we are taking into account that the project still cost 1.2 billion euros.
The Castor project was launched in 2007 and was endorsed by the left-of-centre government at the time. It is an old oil well, now empty, in which the company, Escal UGS, stores enough gas to provide energy for an area of 5 million inhabitants. It's not an unusual method. There are 627 wells of this kind around the world, except that this one is located on a fault line. This is a crisis meeting in Alcanar, one of the towns affected by the tremors. The mayor is trying to put an end to this project, and all the opposition parties here have rallied around him. In this small town, many questions arise. Local environmentalists expressed concerns in 2007, and further studies should have been commissioned at the time, according to the mayor.
It's incomprehensible. We feel that there is a great interest on the part of government above us to complete this project. And with this in mind, things were done shoddily. I think the process was not as rigorous as it should have been.
This evening there's a rapidly convened meeting to try to calm people's fears. The room is full, the whole town is here.
The authorities cannot assure us 100% that these earthquakes will stop, but statistically it's very likely that the earthquakes will stop. The platform is on standby.
In the room, people are wondering about the billion-euro investment and the economic interests of the majority shareholder, ACS, one of the companies of businessman and Real Madrid Football Club president Florentino Perez.
We won't rest until this project has been stopped.
The company claims to have followed all the European standards, but the Spanish government will still have to make a final decision about its future.
Los Angeles, the second largest city in the US and the biggest for the number of gangs. But young people who might end up getting involved in gang crime are being kept off the streets by a group of pigeon fanciers. They're mentoring local youngsters, showing them how to breed and train birds to take part in a sport known as pigeon rolling. Jans Eric Gould and Valérie Defer report.
It's 6:30 a.m. in the gang-ridden area of South Los Angeles.
There's more people? I'll wait.
But dozens of men are awake and staring at the sky. The reason? Today is the Superfly, an annual event showcasing Birmingham roller pigeons. It's a particular breed of bird that performs backward somersaults, called rolls, in the air.
The rolling itself is inbred into them. You get the most score when the birds break in unison. At least 5 have to roll in unison to score.
Competitors, called flyers, compete with flocks of 20 pigeons in periods of 25 minutes outside their homes. Judges grade the birds for the style, speed, and quality of their rolls.
It's a score sheet. It's every time 5 or more birds go. 5 went 6, 5, 5, 6.
It's a hobby that's mostly popular in the poorer and more violent areas of LA. And here, the majority of participants are former gang members.
I don't know if they're real patient, you know what I mean? Very patient.
Will Stenhouse used to be part of the Bloods, a historic gang in Los Angeles. He was incarcerated, and when he got out of jail, he was shot in the chest during a drive-by in front of his house. His love for pigeons, though, inspired him to leave the gang and get a job as a forklift operator.
You know, you're spending more time back here in your backyard than you are in the streets. Pigeons keep you out of trouble, you know. It's a good hobby to have, you know. When you're stressing, I come in here, sit in this chair, and vent with my birds.
Judges and aficionados go from house to house to see the pigeons fly. South LA is still an area plagued with violence. In total, Los Angeles has 450 gangs with more than 50,000 total members.
I'm gonna make money. She gonna make it nasty. How nasty? We don't need a mattress, baby.
That's my trophy case.
This man, Keith London, is a champion in South LA. A former big shot, Keith has transformed his passion into a job. He's a breeder of Birmingham roller pigeons.
One thing it does, it teaches you a sense of responsibility, taking care of something. And then at the same time, it teaches you patience, because you have to be patient.
On this day, Keith organized an auction in his backyard.
I got 60. 60 going once. 65. I got 65 over here. I got 70. 65 going once. 65 going twice. So 65 going.
Aficionados come here to buy pigeons bred by Keith, which is a sure sign of quality.
I went for $65, so it's still a good deal because some of the other birds went for, $100, 100 plus.
The auction is also a day of truce. People from rival gangs can gather here peacefully.
I'm from Watts, and nobody from Watts ever got along with people from Compton. There was always a big issue, but here there's guys from Compton, and we talk like we're family, you know, and I don't know how it works, but it works.
Pigeons were able to unite communities torn apart with territorial fights. Some pigeon men like Keith have worked to help keep more youngsters off the streets. He took Damien under his wing at a time in his life when he was being approached by gangs.
Yeah, see, it can be as simple as walking home from school and then you have a group of guys here that say, you know what, we see you every day. What are you doing? You know, if you should be hanging out with us.
Keith gave Damien his first pigeon and taught him the basics of breeding. Today, Damien has about 36 pigeons, and he hopes that one day he'll be good enough to enter a competition.
And that's the end of this edition of the Best of Reports. Do join us again next week for more. See you then. Bye for now.